Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. Remember, as always, you can listen at KFYO.com and with the KFYO app. Follow me on Twitter at Chad Hasty Radio. So many different ways to get in touch with the program and to listen to us as well. So I think everybody remembers last year, controversy at the state capitol involving the Texas Speaker of the House, Dennis Bonnen, Representative Dustin Burrows, and a meeting with Michael Quinn Sullivan of Empower Texans. That meeting was secretly recorded by Michael Quinn Sullivan and then slowly released in excerpts and then finally released to everybody. The Speaker of the House announced that he would not seek re-election after many members of the Republican caucus came out and were very unhappy and many called for him to resign. He said that he would not seek re-election, and he has really not spoken about the subject until he wrote an opinion piece, editorial, to thefacts.com over the weekend, I believe on Sunday, and now joining us today, the Speaker of the Texas House, Dennis Bonnen. Welcome back to the show, sir. How are you today?
Doing great, Chad. Appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. Absolutely.
I think I've sort of set the stage and kind of laid the groundwork for where we're going to go over the next half hour or so about this controversy, about some many would call scandal. Tell us from take us to the beginning. What happened? And because I think that when we go back to the very beginning of this whole thing blowing up, Speaker Bonnen, that's what so many were wondering. How did this meeting occur? Who invited who to a meeting? How did this all start? And what was the point in your mind of having this meeting?
No, it's a great question. It occurred with me having a chance encounter with Mr. Sullivan at Hobby Airport Wednesday after session. I was flying with my family to Charleston to take a little break and ran into him at the airport. We had a couple of minute flight encounter like you normally have, talked about taking his daughter to Normandy over the coming weekend, and he expressed that I would not visit and meet with him, and I said I'd be glad to talk to him. The next afternoon, he texted me and asked if I would be willing to meet with him. It was a little peculiar. I still have the text because he said, being I wanted to meet with him, he wanted to reach out and ask me to meet with him. It was kind of quintessential Sullivan for you. And so anyhow, I had some gentlemen that I trust and respect who'd been working very hard to kind of help get him to quit going after trusted conservatives in the Republican primary. And they had asked me to visit with him and have a meeting with him if he asked. And so he did. And so I frankly just wanted to visit with him about stopping his continual attacks on conservative Republicans in the Texas House and seeing if he could slow his roll on that, which it's well seen that he's been doing that for some time. And that was the desire and the hope.
But so how did it go from that desire and hope to, hey, let's also talk about these 10 Republicans over here that if you want to target, you want to go after, you can? Well,
if you listen to the recording, I did a horrible job. I screwed up badly. As I've told people, if you want to hate me, I gave you reasons to hate me. If you want to love me, I gave you reason to love me. And if you want to fall in the middle, I gave you reasons to look at it from both directions. I did a really poor job in that meeting, and I'm very sorry for that. But the reality of it is, a lot of that is the spin of Mr. Sullivan. I wasn't in the meeting when that discussion happened, but it was simply the discussion that happens at the Capitol every single day. It was going through a record vote that any Texan could pull up on their phone, just as I believe Mr. Burrows did, on a very important conservative issue that just passed last week in the Republican primary with about 93, 94% statewide, which was ending taxpayer-funded lobbying. And one of the issues I discussed with Michael was, you need to quit going after Republicans, period, okay? But if you can't control yourself, which he's proven he's never been able to, quit going after the trusted conservatives who come up here and try to pass these issues. Why don't you pay attention to those who vote against the issues that you attack the rest of us for not passing? And so after I left, he and Mr. Burrows went through the record vote. And Mr. Burrows did what happens in the Capitol every day. And he talked about who he believed would and would not possibly be willing to support the ending of taxpayer-funded lobbying next time.
During the audio tape, and I went back and I listened to it yesterday because I wanted to make sure I was as accurate as possible.
Sure.
You didn't mention names during that. You didn't go through the entire list, the roll call of names, but
sure.
You rattled off some names, and then you said 38 minutes in, I hope you won't find about 90% of it. You were talking about primaries, and I think you were talking about primary opponents possibly against you. And you had said, I hope you won't find.
I already had one at the time, by the way.
Right. And you said, I hope you won't find about 90% of any others that show up in a Republican primary. He will show you a list of who we hope someone will show up or someone will show up, and we hope you will fund. So explain that, because, and this is where everybody goes off. Was there a physical list? Was there not a physical list? There were names that you had in mind.
There was not a list. And if you listen to the recording after I left the room, it's very clear that it was the reading off of a record vote on taxpayer-funded lobbying.
Right.
Plain and simple. And if you also listen, you'll hear where Mr. Sullivan actually said, "Can I make a list?"
Right. But did you go into the meeting knowing
with a list? No,
not with a list, but knowing that there were however many Republicans that you would be okay with him and his organization targeting?
No, I ran my mouth, and I candidly was trying to appease the man, because in the last decade he's never been able to control himself without going after people. And the reality of it is, my objective was that he not do it at all, which if you listen to the recording again yesterday, I said multiple times, I just wish you wouldn't go after anybody, correct?
Right.
And then I very stupidly ran my mouth, plain and simple. And I apologize for that, and I regret that.
Have you spoken to the members who were singled out in that audio? And have you apologized to them? I've
apologized repeatedly, and I've spoken to almost all of them. Some of them are unwilling to talk, but respectfully to all of them, when you listen to the recording, it's a record vote that they proudly stood behind, and that's what we always have to do. You stand behind the vote you take. It's that simple.
Speaking with Speaker Dennis Bonnen here on the Chad Hasty Show, why did you deny the allegations?
Because they weren't true. The allegation, I think a lot of people miss that point. Mr. Sullivan came out and accused me of bribing him. That's a serious offense. In my mind, that's all that mattered. And that has been proven to be untrue. The Texas Rangers investigated. The district attorney put out a statement saying there's nothing here to charge. And so that is what I emphatically denied. And I frankly apologized for saying inappropriate things and for running my mouth. But I did not, and it has now been proven, that his accusation of having bribed him, which is a baseless accusation. It's what the man does. I believe he also accused Senator Duncan as chancellor of stealing money and cooking the books there at Tech. I mean, this is what this man does. And I think a lot of people got lost in the fact that an accusation of a serious crime is what you are going to focus on if you're the one accused. I think most people didn't take that accusation seriously because they knew it was garbage. But I had to.
If he had not accused you of a legal crime, right? And I think that's where you were writing over the weekend that you were cleared of any legal improprieties, that nothing illegal happened in that meeting. If Michael Quinn Sullivan had not accused you of doing anything illegal, but accused you of offering press credentials in return for holding off fire in certain Republican primaries, would that have been correct?
No, because the problem with this is that if you want to say I did something wrong, what I did wrong is that I didn't remind Mr. Sullivan of something he knows incredibly well, which is if you are a politically active entity, you cannot have press credentials in the House, and that's not a decision made by the Speaker of the Texas House. It's made by House administration and the members within the rules, which the Speaker doesn't engage in. At least I did not. And so the reality of it is he sued the House under Joe Straus's speakership, and he sued it this last session to try and garner his press credentials. He knows that process better than anybody. And the mistake I made is assuming that he never took seriously the fact that he wouldn't quit being politically active at all, because that was the only path he had available to get press credentials. And I just assumed he understood that because he has been through the legal process and lost 2 different times.
But to be fair, to be fair, Speaker, you did say, I can put your guys on the floor. You said, I can do that. I can put your guys on the floor. And you did also threaten to take...
That's what I said. If I did anything wrong, I didn't remind him that if he continued to be politically active, there's no way that would happen. And that goes back to my original point. My original point was for him to quit going after anybody. And if he wouldn't go after anyone, sure, he would be able to have press credentials because he wasn't politically active. The reality of it is, he and I both know he was never going to stop doing that.
We've got to take a break, Speaker Bonnen. Let's go ahead and do that. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion with Texas Speaker of the House, Dennis Bonnen, here on the Chad Hasty Show. Chad Hasty Show, News Talk, KFYO, Texas Speaker of the House, Dennis Bonnen, joining us here on the program. We've got about 6 minutes left here on the show. And Speaker Bonnen, thanks again for joining us. We do appreciate it. You said during you said during the first part of our interview that you did a horrible job. You screwed up badly. You said that you apologized for running your mouth. I guess for those who are just
me?
What's that?
I'm joking. I asked if you were recording me.
That's a yes. We are actually. Yes, it'll be on YouTube a little bit later on.
Yeah, I could tell.
I do want to ask you this. What exactly are you sorry for, and what do you regret out of this entire issue?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Trust me, over the last many months, I've had more than enough time to question and think about, what happened. First and foremost, I have and continue to apologize, to my family, to my wife, and my kids. It's brought very negative attention into their lives that they don't deserve. My wife's been a saint and has supported me, and it's been unfair to them. I've apologized to the members of the House, especially those that I offended. I respect Mr. Rosenthal immensely. I mean, he did a joint statement with me early on and has shown extraordinary decency and statesmanship. But at the same time, I don't apologize for the whole of the conversation. I'm apologizing for working to get more conservatives in the House. No. I'm not going to apologize for trying to make good things happen in the House. And the reality of it is, the biggest apology really is for Mr. Burrows. He never should have been in that meeting. He happened to be in town for signing one of the most significant and landmark legislations with the governor of Senate Bill 2 that he carried for property tax reform, doing a far better job than I was able to accomplish when I carried it the session before. And I pulled him into the meeting at last minute to be a witness. And Mr. Burrows has done absolutely nothing wrong. And he and his family have been attacked. And that's unfair. He did what happens at the Capitol every day. He talked through a record vote on an issue he cares about as a conservative. And that's it. And he's been put through hell for doing so. And it's my fault. And I'm very sorry for that.
Do you regret meeting with Michael Quinn Sullivan?
Well, I mean, yes and no. Throughout my career, I've never been afraid to meet with anyone. And because I believe we can find some common ground and common good, we can pursue things, doing that. I also took the meeting, as I said before, at the request of some gentleman who wanted my help in getting the guy to tone down his attacks on good conservatives and to slow his rhetoric leading into one of the most significant elections in 2020 for Republicans. So in that sense, I'd do it again to protect Republicans and to protect our viability in 2020. However, when it comes up to the impact it's had on my family, on Mr. Burrows, my reputation, and others, I wish I'd called in sick that day. You live and learn.
Why not? And I think this was a big question among a lot of conservatives out there, even conservatives who look at the list and go, or, look at the names and go, hey, you know what? We kind of agree with Bonnen. We kind of agree with Bro. These are the Republicans that maybe do need to be primaried. Why not just come out at the very beginning of this and go almost Trump-esque and go, yep, you know what? These Republicans are the problem.
Because they're not all of them. And look, as Speaker of the House, my goal wasn't to bring negative attention on a single Republican member, and I screwed up, and I'm very sorry for that. But, and also, again, as we discussed before, I was hamstrung in saying anything. I mean, he'd made a very serious legal allegation against me, and I needed to focus on that, even though I knew it was unfounded, more than anything. I mean, don't forget, Chad, I screwed up in that meeting. My goal was to get him to not go after anybody. I did it very poorly, but that was the goal. So that's why I wasn't going to come out and start attacking people, because I had no intention of doing so.
So when you put out I believe you had to put out a statement or maybe an email to members, and that when you were denying, and I just want to clarify this, when you were denying accusations, what you were specifically denying was the legality of the accusations, correct?
I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And in those apologies that I put out to members, I apologized and I said inappropriate things. I said bad things, stupid things. I apologized for the content, but I'm not going to roll over and die for Mr. Sullivan, which is his goal. I mean, it's what this man does to people, and it's frankly why I'm speaking now.
What future?
I care about the Texas House moving forward, and I don't want these continued attacks and these continued outside groups carrying such power over the next speaker and members, because it's wrong. And it's not just Mr. Sullivan. There are plenty of them. He's one of the worst. But the House deserves better. The people of Texas deserve better. And Texans need to understand what's going on so they can better support and encourage their representatives to go to Austin free to represent their district and do what they know is right and know they will be supported by the people at home.
I have about a minute and a half or so left, or about a minute left. We're wrapping up. Do you want to have a future in speaking out in the 2020 election?
I feel passionately about conservatives and Republicans winning in 2020. In any way I can be helpful in that cause, I will do so. I've been supporting candidates in the primaries, financially and otherwise, and I will continue to do so in 2020, because that was the objective of the meeting, which was success for Republicans in 2020.
Speaker Bonnen, truly appreciate your time today. Let's visit again soon.
Thanks, Chad.